Alors, bienvenue à tous. Aujourd'hui, on débute.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are beginning our study of Bill S-252, the Voluntary Blood Donations Act, an act to amend the blood regulations.
Our witness for today, the Honorable Senator Pamela Wallin, sponsor of the bill. Senator Wallin, I believe you do have some opening remarks for us before we go to questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to appear before the committee today to discuss Bill 252, the Voluntary Blood Donations Act. The intent of this bill is clear: to put an end to paying people for their blood and to put an end to the sale and export of that blood to foreign buyers. The cash for blood system undermines the voluntary nature of giving, an act deeply rooted in Canadian society, an act of generosity by Canadians to save the lives of loved ones and strangers alike. Having private plasma collection clinics in Canada creates other problems as well. They set up shop in disadvantaged areas with vulnerable populations. This is an ethical issue for sure. And because they sell their product, the product they collect for a profit only to foreign buyers, there is no contribution to Canadian needs. Therefore, this bill won't affect the supply for rare blood needs. Currently, Canada is dependent on the United States for 80 to 85% of all the plasma being used in our medical system. Canadian Blood Services, our national not-for-profit blood and plasma collector, is aiming for 50% self-sufficiency. But they can't reach that goal if their voluntary base is being poached for profit. There is more than anecdotal evidence. We have information obtained under Freedom of Information, as well, of course, as the public record. Canadian Plasma Resources, the only private, for-profit plasma collection operator in Canada, now boasts having over 300 visits a week at its Moncton location and aims for 1,000 a week, and they claim to have over 3,000 regular donors in Saskatoon. Not surprising, then, that Canadian Blood Services has recently experienced a drop in its donor base, particularly in young adults. Why? Because for-profit clinics have been targeting their physical and online advertising to 18 to 24-year-olds, including putting up ads in university washrooms, promising cash. Colleagues, paying for plasma incentivizes the wrong behavior. This is not building altruistic citizens or a strong donor base. Canadian donors are not meant to be a revenue stream for private companies looking to make a profit, and Canadians have never required a financial reward to find the will to donate. I'd like to just take a moment to remind all of us why we're having this discussion. It was nearly 30 years ago that tainted blood infected over 30,000 Canadians with HIV or hepatitis C, and it is thought that 8,000 may yet die as a result of that contamination. So Canada set up the Crever Commission in 1993, and the resulting report called for Canada's blood donor system to remain a protected public resource. Canadian Blood Services was created as the sole entity for blood collection, and for the past 20 years, CBS has been working to rebuild the voluntary system that once flourished under the auspices of the Red Cross. It has proved difficult to rebuild public trust and confidence, and CBS does not have the name recognition or, as we say today, brand awareness as the Red Cross once had. It is even harder when the voluntary system is actively being undermined. But memories are short, so in 2013, Health Canada decided to open up access to blood collection by private for-profit companies and began issuing licenses to Canadian Plasma Resources, or CPR. I know these initials are sometimes confusing. No one on earth can figure out why these licenses were ever issued. There was one meeting with some stakeholders, but there was no public consultation, and there was no demonstrated public need. So before long, Ontario, Alberta, then British Columbia, all moved to pass legislation to stop private operators. Bill S-252 is modeled on that legislation and inspired in part by the fact that Quebec has for more than 20 years banned all private plasma collection. When I learned that one of the 2 private plasma collection facilities was operating in my home province of Saskatchewan, I knew that I had a responsibility to introduce this legislation. Media reports to the contrary. Legislation to ban paid plasma is supported by over 80% of the stakeholders in Canada's blood system, including, of course, Canada Blood Services. The ban is also supported by the International Red Cross, the World Health Organization, the European Blood Alliance, and the International Society of Blood Transfusion, by medical professionals everywhere, and of course, it crosses all party lines. Colleagues, I believe that ensuring a safe and voluntary blood donation system in Canada is the right thing to do. The objective of this bill is to rebuild and then retain the true blood donor base in Canada. But it can't happen if we let for-profit operations entice voters away from the public system with credit cards or cash. The licensing of paid plasma clinics in Canada contravenes every single fundamental recommendation of the Creever Inquiry. We need an immediate moratorium on the granting of any new licenses until this issue is fully vetted, a process which we have begun today. So thank you for your time and particularly for this opportunity. Before